Hey Lee students, welcome to week 4. We are almost halfway complete with this semester. Now, a few housekeeping things. Next Monday is when your midterm is due. Your midterm needs to be about 7 pages, double-spaced, 7 pages of content with a little bit of a bibliography or endnotes at the end. I'm looking for a little bit of research beyond the course text. Not much, but you can see the topics there, and hopefully you're working hard on it already. If you ever want to submit me your midterm or your final early just for me to proof or to give you some feedback, feel free to do that. You can email that to me, and I'll do my best to get that back to you quickly. But I know you're doing well. We're almost halfway through. We're starting Exodus this week, and Exodus is a very popular book. It's talked about a lot because so much takes place. You have the introduction to one of the most key characters in all the Old Testament, Moses. He didn't hold a major title. He wasn't a king or anything of that nature, but he was highly influential. Most likely the author of the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch, which is what this class is all about. But Moses is a curious character because of his life. Lived about 120 years, 40 years in Pharaoh's court, 40 years in the wilderness with just his family, and then 40 years with a couple million Hebrews wandering around. If there's anything that Moses is known for, it is the Exodus event. He was the one that went before Pharaoh, as we know. But the next thing is he's the one who established really the foundations to really civilization as far as how we're going to practice laws, how we're going to worship God, how we're going to have a code of conduct. We all know, of course, in Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments are given, and he was the one that was up on that mountain with God, and just an amazing place. Now, the traditional site for Mount Sinai is in the Sinai Peninsula, and it's an amazing place. It's in the middle of nowhere. I've driven there before, and there is absolutely nothing around it. If you're taking a tour, you're with the group, and all of a sudden you see some camels, and everyone's so excited. Yay, we saw camels. About 6 hours later, like, yeah, camel. Okay, get us there. But the Sinai trip is just beautiful. There's a little chapel there. I actually got a chance to go up on it for sunrise. It's a cool opportunity. They wake you up in your hotel at 2 a.m. and you go about a 10-15 minute drive, and you walk. Now keep in mind, this is pitch black. They don't have electricity out there like we would think, so it's not like you're on sidewalks or lamp posts. And we walked for maybe about a half a mile or so, and we got on a camel, and for the next 2.5 hours I rode a camel, and it was picturesque, but it was also a little painful. After that, you walk another probably about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile up, and then you get the stairs. Now, if you ever saw The Lord of the Rings, there's a scene where Frodo and Sam have to go up the stairs to get to Mordor, and that's the picture you can almost put together for the stairs. 750 stairs carved out of the rock. And you get all the way to the top, and normally you get there right around sunrise, 5:50, 6 a.m. So it's about a 4-hour journey altogether, and you get there right at that peak, and it is just beautiful. There's a little indenture in the mountainside there where, it could be the cleft of the rock where Moses hid when God passed by. But it's a powerful night. And then, of course, you've got to walk all the way back down. And Mount Sinai is just a neat place. But to get to Mount Sinai, the first thing the Israelites had to do was get out of Egypt. Pharaoh didn't want them leaving. He had free labor. He had slaves. He was building this amazing city and all these monuments to himself, to his family, and the Hebrews were his muscle. So God, of course, we know, sends the plagues, and you can read about those in chapters 5 through 9 and see the different things. And of course, we know the final plague was the death angel, when the firstborn. Now, quickly we like to think, okay, the firstborn child, which is gut-wrenching enough, but it goes far deeper than that. The firstborn of the livestock and everything. There was so much death that night, and we all know that it was the homes where the blood of the Lamb was on the doorposts. They were preserved. They were kept safe. And that was the first feast of Passover. Listen to this scripture in Psalm 89, verse 15. Blessed, happy, fortunate, to be envied are the people who know the joyful sound, who understand and appreciate the spiritual blessings symbolized by the feasts. They walk, O Lord, in the light and the favor of thy countenance. The Feast of Passover is the first feast. It's celebrated in springtime, just before Easter. And it's a powerful declaration. In the Leviticus chapter 23, next week you'll be getting into Leviticus, you'll read about it. But Passover is that first feast. It's when the Passover lamb passed over their homes. Passover is a three-part feast. You have Passover, you have unleavened bread, and then you have first fruits. And all that is in the same 7-8 day period. And the Hebrews, the Jews, still celebrate all that today. Now, the cool thing about the feasts, and we're going to get into this a little bit over the next 2 weeks, is the feasts are historical. Then there's a prophetical fulfillment in Jesus Christ for all the feasts, and then we actually live them out. We still honor the feasts. But as Psalm says here, if you want to be blessed and happy and fortunate, you need to understand these feasts and allow them to flow through your life. And Passover, of course, is a key one because Jesus fulfilled it when He was our Passover lamb. And so the spiritual fulfillment is us as the church. When we receive Jesus Christ, that is our moment of salvation. That was the moment of salvation for the Israelites. What pulled them out of slavery, out of bondage, out of death, and helped them to pass over into life, headed into a new direction. They began a journey. And of course, Moses is a type. He's a figure of Christ. He isn't Jesus. They are two separate people, of course. But Moses is just kind of a foreshadowing, so to speak. And so you have the Israelites leaving Egypt and going into the Promised Land. It's a journey, but that salvation took place on day one. And so we see that fulfilled in our life. And you can read about Scripture on that throughout the book of Exodus. And of course, we see its fulfillment in Leviticus 23 when Moses puts it into paper. Here's how we're going to celebrate this feast. Here's how we're going to honor it. Then immediately, where do they go? They have to fight the Red Sea. And so you can almost see that as a rebirth. That's a renewal. Where do we get water baptism from? It's the same kind of principle. And so you see this journey, this process in the Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits. Now, first fruits is a really kind of an interesting principle. Exodus 34:9, it says, "Do not leave the way you came." And so Israelites, they had to get out of Egypt, but their ultimate purpose was to get to the Promised Land. They had to go from death to life, bringing them from what was to what they're going to be. And so in Exodus 14 is when they come to that Red Sea. Now let me tell you what a first fruit is. First fruit is something that Moses is going to establish. It's pulling you through. It's a 3-day journey from where they were in Egypt to get to the Red Sea. Where else do we get 3 days? Jesus Christ. And so Jesus then, if you remember the story, after He died, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb. And she went to see Jesus. He wasn't there, but there was a gardener there. And they had a conversation. And remember, we all know the story. It was Jesus. And He says, "Mary." And immediately she recognized Him. "Don't come and touch me. Don't hold on to me. I must go to the Father." And what He had to do is He was in that state, that intermediate state. He had to be the first fruit offering. He had to go and allow God to approve Him. That's what first fruit is when we take our first fruit to God, that first portion, whether it's finances, whether it's something temporal, whether it's wool or sheep or wheat, and it's approved. It's a wave offering. And once that's approved, everything else is allowed access. Jesus was God's first fruit offering. And because He was approved, we get interest. That's salvation. That's Passover. Have a great week. Let me know if you need anything.